Dear friends, welcome to the 14th episode of My Career, My Identity series. Success begins with hard work, and happiness begins with good health. The Sustainable Development Goals stress that quality is a key element of universal health coverage. Quality of care is the degree to which health services for individuals and populations increase the likelihood of desired health outcomes and are consistent with evidence-based professional knowledge. There is an urgent necessity of quality in healthcare. Effective, safe, timely, equitable, integrated, and efficient healthcare services are the right of each individual. World Health Organization confirms an estimated 1.8 billion people, or 24% of the world's population, live in fragile contexts that are challenged in delivering quality, essential health services. Here comes the necessity of technological integration and e-health applications to bring better quality and availability of health services. Keeping your body healthy is an expression of gratitude to the whole cosmos, the trees, the clouds, and everything. Technological innovations and changes were visible in the areas of healthcare during the COVID crisis. Many innovations and technological advancements which were unknown to the public and elderly are now visible, and daily life practices through the varied degrees of shutdown and lockdown. Healthcare innovations try to improve the quality of life. For health industry and e-health services, COVID year is considered a dream year. This significant year has contributed to the e-health industry with mega innovations and researches. There are extensions of progress in the fields of health, pharma, vaccination, and applications. Health is a priority now, and it is a strategic industry where robotics, machine learning, and data science contribute to the universal health coverage and quality. Industry, government, technology, research centers, health departments, and people are in close interaction to build new products and services. There is an enjoyment of growth seen, which will be beneficial to the quality healthcare of the general public. Transparency and understanding of the impact of innovations and discoveries on real patients in their own real worlds will make healthcare innovations safer. Into this specialty and super innovative area, we have a real jewel person today to share and interact with us at Dr. Benny Palati Vidu Vidyalayam YouTube channel, My Career, My Identity series. A person who is doing his doctoral research in this field. Mr. Ben Philip is specializing in e-health software innovations from Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. A spirited, innovative researcher who has gained prestigious research fellowship from a reputed international university. Congratulations, Mr. Ben, and appreciate your profound contribution and innovative research involvement. The university where Mr. Ben is granted with the doctoral fellowship is a world-class institution. Deakin research activities are growing. 89% of the research conducted in this university are rated at or above world standard in the 2011 ERA rankings. Mr. Ben has reached here. Great. You are part of this world-class research center. The skills that Mr. Ben gained through his education should help the youngsters dream to involve in research and innovation and dream greater. The way how Mr. Ben Philip is approaching his studies and research should motivate the future generation to focus on surroundings and necessities of life, to be thinking and creative. Congratulations and welcome Mr. Ben Phillip to this episode of My Career, My Identity. What is a change? We know 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. What is the speed of change? Why change has this super speed? Because there are many things that are to be changed. There are many imperfections. Better solutions and smarter answers bring changes, and they are needed for daily life. Mobile is not just an instrument for communication. It is becoming a human partner. It is getting ready to do everything, and 360-degree support system is envisaged with the help of mobile. Robotics, artificial learning, and machine learning all integrated into mobile applications and systems, and it becomes our a complete partner. Today we have few youngsters who are interested to think of their creative future. Congratulations, dear youngsters. In order to be creative, we have to be after inconveniences and problems of life. Pablo Picasso says the chief enemy of creativity is good sense. How should we respond to the issues of life? What way we need to be disciplined, and how creative we need to be in our studies? Yes, these are major concerns. And we are just going to think and discuss, gain wisdom, and grow through this episode. It is health that is real wealth and not pieces of gold and silver, said our Mahatma Gandhi. It is true. Doctors won't make you healthy. Nutritionalists won't make you slim. Teachers won't make you smart. Gurus won't make you calm. Mentors won't make you rich. Trainers won't make you fit. Ultimately, you or I, each person has to take responsibility to save ourselves. So let's try. So here we have Mr. Ben. Once again, welcome to everyone, and over to you, Mr. Ben.
Thank you, Father, for the kind words. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful platform. So, good evening, everyone. So, before I start with, my journey into what I'm doing right now, just want to put out a disclaimer of sorts. Right. So, I've attended similar programs before, earlier when I was in college and during my bachelor's, and more than five, if I remember correctly. And perhaps, like after all this time, there's one thing I can say confidently is that I have absolutely no idea who the speakers, what they talked about, or what I even gathered from there, or even why I attended those seminars. Right. So since it's the first time I'm doing it, right, giving a talk like this, I'll at least try to keep it short and try to make it more interactive, where you have more time to ask me questions rather than just me talking at you. Right. So let's try to keep it a bit more interactive, and well, all the questions are welcome. Right. So, well, a bit about me. So I was born in Kerala. I lived there for 1 year, after which I moved to Delhi. Right. So both my parents were government employees, and they're now retired. And they moved down back to Kerala. They settled there, enjoying life, I guess. In Delhi, I attended St. Columba School from kindergarten to 12th. Right. And during this time, I was really exposed to a lot of different options that I could pursue after graduating from school. Right. So the good thing was that I was never really, forced into taking up something I wasn't really interested in. So basically, life was good. My parents were really supportive, so that's a good thing. And although academic performance was really, really important, it wasn't something I felt was, forced onto me. So you know what it feels like, right? That constant pressure to score 95 plus or even 100 in all the units and all the subjects, right? So it wasn't the case for me. So one thing that I still carry with me to this day is what my father used to say back then, right? Marks, do matter, but not as much, right? It's not the end of the world if you don't, top the class in one subject. What matters more is what I've learned, and if, I've tried my level best. Right. So while this sounds really easy and, really carefree, it's not the case. Trust me. Now, for instance, how do you define what your best performance is like, right? How do you even know that? The answer is really complicated, and essentially keeps you pushing through and keeps you trying and moving forward. Right? And somehow, by some miracle, I managed to survive the ordeal that we call school. Got through all the tests and exams, and well, we had back then, and yep, graduated. So I was always really interested in technology, right? And from an early age, was more like the curious kind, and had this complicated relationship with technology. Right, so I love to experiment with different things, and now that I think about it, it was also sometimes a tad bit dangerous, right? From literally destroying things, taking things apart, to almost. I'm not really proud about saying this, but I almost burned down a house once, and even almost got myself killed, almost got myself electrocuted. So don't try stuff like that at home. Curiosity is good, but as long as you have some knowledge or some support, that should be fine. Don't try to experiment with unknown things. But anyway, things changed when I got my first computer when I was in class 7. And since then, I've mostly focused on computer science and computers. And I got myself literally hooked onto the domain. So it was right from hardware to software and, well, you name it. At first, it was basically at the superficial level, and how they were put together, what components went in there, what software was installed on it, and it was mostly about trying to create something myself. So at that time, it wasn't really super complicated or really elegant. It was just things I was trying to play around with. And at first, so it basically developed into a genuine interest, and in digging a bit deeper and creating something for myself. So as I said, trying to build things myself. So again, I had always had liked solving puzzles, and the software or computer science back then was something like that for me as well, right? So it was exactly that, trying to solve complex problems by writing code. So you have a massive thing that you're trying to break down into smaller bits, and I absolutely enjoyed doing it. So after clearing my 10th board exams, well, I chose physics, chemistry, and math with computer science, and that's where I got the first taste of what actual programming was like. So it was definitely interesting, but was difficult. Was really, really hard at the time, and that's when I actually faced the first failure of sorts. It wasn't something I was prepared for, but slowly I got the hang of it and started to enjoy it, a lot more. And it was at that moment that computer science really felt less like a subject and more like a hobby, something that I absolutely enjoyed doing, right? So that might be a key takeaway for you guys, right? If you really love doing something, you might spend more time on it, and before you know it, well, you'll make headways through it, right? So I used to spend a lot of time trying to build new things using what I learned, right? So I would have really loved to explore more, but unfortunately, the internet, as we have today, was not really a luxury we could afford at that time. And for those here, there are really a lot of these amazing resources that are available online that you can use to learn, further your career and even build your skill set up further. So that said, I graduated from school in 2009, and I had been accepted to a few colleges. I had an option to go for a BSc honors in chemistry, right, in St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, or I could do a BTech in computer science in Kerala. So that was a very, very tough choice. Right? That was really a confusing state. And I wanted to stay in Delhi because all of my friends were here, right? It was closer to home, but deep down, I knew I was more into computer science than chemistry, right? I wanted to do something else. And my father also pointed that out to me. And well, eventually I went on to pursue a degree in engineering, which, well, as we know, lasts 4 years. So that was from 2009 to 2013. If I'm being quite honest, I did slack off a bit, but I did have a good time, met a lot of amazing people who are, now all around the world doing amazing things. And during this time, I remember there were two units that I found absolutely interesting, really interesting: cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And these are things I really loved. And at that time, I really wanted to pursue a career in either of those two fields. I'd say cybersec or AI. But then again, there wasn't much information available to us, and I went the traditional route, right? So what everyone literally does, you know, try to find a job before you graduate, right? Try to find a job, get a good paying job, and try to settle down, once you graduate and so on. I got a decent offer, and I moved back to Delhi in 2013, and I remained there till mid 2017. So during my time when I was employed, I learned one thing: whatever you learn in college is actually nothing compared to what you'll experience in the real world, right? There's a huge difference. Things were, really confusing at first. I was being shuffled around with different technologies and platforms, and they did not really feel good at first. But it was an amazing learning experience, right? And here too, I was introduced to some bits of cybersecurity, and that's when I decided to go for higher studies. And the funny thing is, I was actually planning on heading to Germany, right? I was still learning German and applying to all colleges there. And I started applying to all these universities where I could specialize in cybersec, but well, life had other plans. And in 2017 June, I moved to Melbourne for my master's. So as it happened, I applied for a master's in IT, specializing in cybersecurity and networking, and I had a great time. Right? I met a lot of amazing people, picked up a lot of new things, and most importantly, learned how to survive, learned how to build something, from absolutely nothing. It was more like what our parents used to say, when we were back at home. I came from so and so place in India. I had nothing in my pocket. I came here and I survived, and it's the same story, I guess. So at Deakin, that's where I'm right now. I had the opportunity to participate in several hackathons. So for those of you who don't know what a hackathon is, it's more like a meet where you have these challenges and stuff that you're trying to solve in a given time frame. So some of them can last for 24 hours, some can be 3 days or 4 days. So I've attended a couple that were 2 days, some that were 3 days. It was an amazing experience, right? And here I understood what it really meant by networking, right? Getting to know a lot more people in your domain, other domains, and trying to build a professional relationship. That's something that was seriously lacking, in my prior experience. So at these events, I met a lot of these amazing people from all around the world who are trying to create something new, and we're working on different projects that aimed to solve, real world problems, right? From trying to create projects to help farmers, right? Using technology to help farmers to automate irrigation and stuff, to create applications for the blind people and all that. So it was an entirely different experience for me, right? So for instance, again, I met teams who are trying to solve problems of recycling, right? So there were, I remember it was back in 2018, we had this hackathon, and there was a team that was trying to use machine learning and computer vision to try and identify, these different articles or different waste items that you could recycle, right? So instead of people having to go and manually do it, you have machines and automated stuff that could identify things and classify them, right? Similarly, I met people who were building tools to help the visually impaired. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they were doing back then. It's been a while, but it was something really, that got my attention and kind of pushed me in that direction as well. You know, and there were even people who were building devices or medical devices to help women with period pain, which, as it happens, is also commercially available in Australia right now, right? So a lot of these inspirational people, and now this experience actually inspired me a lot to do something that can benefit a larger section of the society. And the hackathons was something that pushed me in this direction, and that I'm in right now. And eventually, through the network that I had unknowingly, I'd say, built, I happened to meet my principal supervisor in right now. So I wouldn't really have had these chances, had I shied away from open invitations and chances at networking. So I guess the main takeaway for you guys here would be that there are so many opportunities that we miss out on, right? Because we are afraid that we're unsure if we'll be able to do something or complete certain tasks. We're unsure if we'll be able to keep up to the standard, or if we are even good enough, right? Or maybe we're afraid to ask for something, right? So if there's something you're really interested in, identify these opportunities and grab them as soon as you can, because the opportunities once gone, they don't really come back. And that's what I really learned over here. And for me, that's exactly what happened. And I think I've already talked about this. My background was in software development and cybersecurity. That's what my master's was in. And I was working on a summer internship, and I was in the university working with my team on a chatbot for depression, right? And I was sitting in a makeshift office of the university. And this one fine evening, my supervisor also, happened to walk in through the door. We had a chat about, what comes after a master's. And then I thought, well, I might as well ask him about PhD opportunities and what it takes to actually get in there. I was interested in doing some research, but had no idea what that was like. So he told me about a project and asked me to think about it, right? What I thought about the project, the idea and the implications and the impact. So I already had a taste of what health applications might look like, right? What they, what they are, how do we build them? Especially with the project I was working on back then, the depression bot. And I was a bit curious, right? And it turned into a deeper interest in that topic. And a few weeks later, as it happened, I was writing a PhD proposal based on that discussion, which got accepted and led me to what I'm doing right now. So from software engineering to cybersecurity networking, and now sitting right smack in the middle of unknown territory, having no idea what health was about, but starting with something entirely new. So that brings me to my current topic, right? And what I've been working on for the last 1.5 years, mobile health. And more specifically, it's something that integrates a lot of what I've done before as well, right? So trying to create a platform for integrating a diverse array of health sensors and wearables along with numerous health applications. So trying to integrate, the best of these worlds. For those who are wondering what mHealth is, basically, a way in which you're combining, your mobile phones, patient monitoring devices, PDAs, and other wireless devices to essentially create a common package and to try and improve the quality of life for a lot of people, right? So trying to provide better health services using mobile technology. Right, and I guess a lot of you might have also, known about these applications. Might have used these applications without really understanding or knowing what they really were. For example, right, these days we all know what the pandemic is doing to us, and in a lot of countries we're using these COVID tracing apps and all that, right? So they all come under this category. Okay, so there are many different types. So one of them is like a drug dosage or reference calculator. We have weight management applications, apps for monitoring cardiac health, bots for depression, and a lot of others that have been created and widely adopted. Among others, we have things like medical reference applications and dictionaries, right? And they're also popular among caregivers and patients. Like maybe not so much in India, but they're slowly gaining traction elsewhere. So the WHO actually has an organization, I think it was called the Global Observatory for eHealth, and based on their definition of digital health intervention, there are two categories of these health applications. So one is for personal health tracking. So essentially that allows people to monitor their own health and diagnostic data, right? So you might have wearable or stuff and you're monitoring your health metrics and all these things. And you also have another category called on-demand information services to clients. So basically where people can look up information, go online, search for some stuff and a medical reference and all these things. And the thing is, it's not really just restricted to applications, right? There are plenty of wearables, plenty of these devices like smartwatches and fitness trackers that, along with other wearable sensors that help you track your physiological metrics and biomarkers to ensure that you're doing really fine, or even help predict that something is, something has happened or is about to happen. For example, if I remember correctly, back in 2017, there was an incident where a person was actually wearing his Apple Watch to bed, so mostly just to track his sleep. And that thing woke him up in the middle of the night, somewhere around like 1 a.m., right, with an alert saying that his resting heart rate was elevated, was like over 100 and something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but it was elevated above normal. So essentially what the alert was saying that he's about to have a heart attack, right? So it was able to track all that while he was sleeping and in a way that, try to save his life. And well, as you know, technology has come a long way, right? And we have so many cost-effective hardware solutions that along with these, innovative software components, they help us track and improve our own health. Right, so with that, what I'll do is I'll share a slideshow, right, that I have here about my work, what I've been doing, and I'll just try to cover what really what is required in this domain and how you can contribute and what comes in the future. I'll try to share my screen and I hope my screen is visible. Let me just try here. Is it visible?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay. Oops, I'll just jump back. Right, so basically my topic was called the Unified Application Platform for mHealth Services. As I said, my background was in software engineering, and most of what I've been trying to do is work on a platform that allows us to integrate different sensors and different devices together, and also applications, right? So rather than having several health applications running on your phone, we're trying to create a unified platform for that. Right, so for those who are new to the domain and have no idea what mHealth is about, as I mentioned earlier, right? So the WHO created an organization called the Global Observatory for eHealth, set up by the WHO, and they define mHealth or mobile health as the medical and public health practice, which is supported by hardware like mobile phones, patient monitoring equipment, per PDAs, and other wireless devices, right? So in a sense, it is using specialized devices or even everyday technology like smartphones and smartwatches to track and monitor one's health, right? Trying to improve the quality of life, basically. And over the years, the popularity of these solutions has been steadily increasing, right? And recently, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Forbes estimated that the demand for these systems would grow each year by around 20% till 2022. So that's a good growth, a massive growth, actually. And this includes applications from a wide range of cases, like, as I mentioned earlier, drug dosage reference calculators, medical reference apps, weight management apps, and just to name a few. And does not really stop at apps, but also includes sensors and devices. So I think the image kind of speaks for itself. Right, so essentially in this domain, we're not just looking at software, but also trying to combine hardware with it. And there are numerous applications and devices that have been developed here for this domain that introduces a lot of problems that we are trying to solve, right? And in my project, we're mostly looking at it from two perspectives: from the point of view of an end user and the point of view of a developer, software developer. Right. So okay, so from the end user's perspective, right? So I'll take a real world example that I think you all might be familiar with. So if you visit the Google Play Store and search for terms like mHealth or heart health or anything related to health, you'd be greeted with a site that looks something like this, right? You'll have a lot of these applications, a bunch of applications, and you'll have no idea which one to, click on and even choose. And now this is old data. It's from 2017. It was estimated that there are more than 3 lakh applications in the app stores. And that number is actually steadily growing, right? Which in a way highlights one major issue. As a huge pile of applications with different varying levels of quality and a significant amount of duplication across different applications, right? So you have features that are fragmented across different apps, and you might have like 2,000 applications or 10,000 applications that do pretty much the same thing. And many applications are available with absolutely no reviews of their content and could be of literally no use. And this could also make it difficult to locate good ones, or could even potentially provide wrong information or incorrect information to people. And again, features are fragmented over different apps, right? So end users often have to deal with more than one application, as a single app might not really provide all the features that people are looking for. So it's not really a surprise that there have been plenty of studies that have been conducted in this area, and there was this one, the one that is right on the top over here. It was by this person called Wilson, and it was basically done on the overload of health apps. And they found that end users would rather not download health applications, as that would really unnecessarily increase the number of apps on their smartphones. And then similarly, there was another study by the good folks over here, Paul Krebs and Dustin Duncan. They studied the use of mHealth apps among smartphone owners in the United States, and they found that a significant number of these users, they stopped using such services. It was mainly due to challenges like, there's a significant burden of data entry, right? You have to keep on, manually entering data and stuff. So they did not like it and they uninstalled the phone. So it's all reflecting onto poor user experience. And in a study that was published in August 2019, around the continued use of mHealth apps, I'm not sure of the exact authors. Now, in that study, they confirmed the same in the observations, right? So about data collection in health applications, it's expected to be convenient and low effort. And according to the participants, it should be automated, and data collected should be automatically synchronized. So, right. So rather than people having to manually enter stuff and type in different things in other different applications, they prefer something which does things for them, right? So things should be automated, right? So basically clean and simple interfaces, easy navigation within applications, and all these were actually factors that contributed to continued use, right? So basically, we're talking about adoption of mHealth applications and what slows down and why it might go down. So based on that, when consumers really have to use more than one application, as is the case right now, right, with different interfaces and layouts and different experiences that they provide, what does that do to the users and end users experience? Right? Nothing good, right? So it's basically pointing to a degraded experience. And this is an example of the many health-related apps that are available in mobile app stores that show the similarity in some features and differences in user experience, which are offered by the larger set of applications. Now, it does not necessarily mean the experience in all these apps is bad, but it's just an example of a couple of applications I use myself. Right, and in all these instances, you see that these all applications have different design languages, different ways of communicating some information. So in this case, the first one basically shows you the person has burned so much calories and so on. So it has an entirely different design language. The third instance has something completely different. This screenshot shows an entirely different layout. So imagine what it might do to a person, a not so tech savvy person who's trying to use these apps, and you're greeted with different types of these applications and layouts. So that kind of causes some disruption, disruption, I'd say. So it's basically impacting their experience. Right. And even though the feature sets are all common and they provide and integrate, with each other, the problem is that, data sharing between these applications can take a longer route. So rather than, them sharing data with each other directly, you have to go through the platform. So in this case, it's Apple Health. So you have to go through that, and then another application has to fetch data from there. So in a way, it can be a bit limited. It is also a bit inconsistent.
Which you can see from here, right? In one application, it says 4,863 steps. In one, it says 1,643 steps. So it's basically
Earlier, people really need to download more applications, right? So it's in a way affecting your storage, your mobile storage and experience. And one of the goals of my project is to try and create a platform that offers a uniform experience across services, and also in a way eliminates the need for downloading 5,000 apps. I'm just exaggerating a bit, but you know what I'm talking about. So mHealth applications, well, as I said, they're really useful, and even more so when they are accompanied by sensors, right? And there are many of them available now. Apart from the standard smartwatches and smart scales, they also include wearables like, for example, a smart belt for gait analysis, right? So how you're walking, and if your steps, are all fine and proper, I guess. And there are also devices like smart fabrics and even smart pajamas that help monitor your activity and even sleep. Right. So basically, the domain is looking at a huge growth of large pool of devices, heterogeneous devices, the data from which can be combined to provide better health outcomes and experiences for end users. And so I think the image here kind of speaks for itself. So you have so many devices that are being used, and it might not be a common sight right now, but there are a lot of these devices that are used on a daily basis. Maybe not smart socks and belts, but some bracelets and smart rings, smart watches, key trackers. They're all very common. So from the development aspect, so sorry about being too technical here, but from the development side, applications would really need to have, a lot of code for collecting and managing health data, which can be seen as an overhead if the data already exists on the smartphone. As I said, users might have to enter things manually, and there are a lot of these applications that process and store data in the phone. Right. So there was this study by Garcia Magariño. I'm not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing the name properly, but as they mentioned in the study in one of the papers, because of the diversity in the platforms and technologies, developers end up spending a considerable amount of time building apps from scratch, right? So these are things that can definitely be avoided. And then there are challenges like, integrating several devices, sharing data across applications, and there is a limited investment in handling and aggregating data from different sources, right? So as I said, you have one device, you might have one application for that, and data is being shared from that device to the app, and that might be the end of it, right? Now, these days, there are more and more applications that are sending data to platforms like Apple Health and Google Fit, but you know, then again, from the end user's perspective, things get even more complicated. So again, as I said, although there are frameworks that consider these points, right, they eventually rely on users having to use more than one application, which leads to, well, poor user experience. And the question is like, can this be improved for both end users and developers? Right, and there was a paper that was published, I think, in 2017 by John Higgins, where he suggested that a single application that covers all major aspects of health and fitness as a possible future direction. And in our project, our aim is actually to expand on that vision. So try and create a single unified platform that enables all these things to interact with each other and to improve user experience. Right, so this figure basically condenses the challenges I was talking about, right, from the user and the developer perspective. So there are too many health applications in the market. There's a need to use more than one application, duplication of effort, data entry, switching between interfaces. So all of that leads to a poor experience for users. For developers, well, security and privacy, obviously that's important because you're dealing with health data. Then you also have integration with several devices and the problem of sharing data between apps, right? So whether or not you want to do that, that's an entirely different story, but there are problems with limitations like that. So the next thing that we also try to focus on is the usability of these applications, right? So ISO basically defines usability with three attributes, right? So effectiveness in performing a certain task, right? So, efficiency, as in if it's a user able to perform certain tasks efficiently after learning the system, right? And the satisfaction of that person after using the system. So is a system actually usable? Right, so there are many models that help us do that. And since we're looking at improving the user experience and usability, our goal is basically to build a platform which in a way is easy to learn and use, efficient, error resistant, and overall provides a pleasant experience to all users. Right, so that brings us to the research goal, which is basically to investigate how we can improve, on these challenges and essentially create a unified health platform or mHealth platform to integrate multiple sensors and applications together to improve user experience and essentially create a framework for enabling developers to build applications for this platform. We're trying to, solve these three problems of data management, application development, and improved user experience, right? So enabling data sharing and simplifying the process of developing health apps and to provide a better experience for end users. Right. So again, I apologize for this technical looking image, but I think that's the that's the best I could come up with. So my work essentially revolves around what we call mini health apps. Right. So it might be a new term for many people, but the concept of mini applications is not entirely new. Right? It has been introduced in a white paper that was sent over to the W3C, that's the World Wide Web Consortium. Right. So the paper was for standardizing mini applications as a new format of mobile apps that relies basically on web technologies while integrating with the capabilities of your smartphone, right? So it is essentially a web application, more like a website. You can, in a simplified way, it's more like a website. You can think of it, but it behaves like a native app, like a regular application. And well, they offer similar benefits, right? Regular applications, but with additional benefits like being free from installation. You don't have to install these apps, right? You don't really have any storage constraints or requirements, and they also come with the added benefit of being able to use or access platform capabilities. So basically, you're looking at small applications, mini applications that are running inside a native app. So it's more like you install one application and you have these small components that are running inside it, which allow to share data with each other and also access your phone hardware, right? So you might have a single app with a bunch of small components which are accessing your GPS or Bluetooth or different things. So essentially, you don't have any installation, right? Data sharing becomes easy, and you have simplified functions. So instead of having a super complicated app that does 1,000 things, you might have one mini application that focuses just on one particular task. And that's exactly what we're trying to build. Which essentially, we have one application that supports several others. That's what you see over here in this diagram with the mini app container. And what you see over there, view layer, logic layer, that's basically the mini apps we're talking about. So this image over here essentially shows our long-term vision in a way, right? So the big picture for the project. So on the user side that you see over here, sorry, this side, you basically have a mobile device that connects to a set of wearables or sensors, the devices that provide some health-related data, which is then made available as to the plugins or the mini apps that I was talking about that are running inside the container, right? That's on the user's smartphone or even tablet. So the data collected can then be synced to the cloud platform. That is, an addition that we can consider later on, the long run. So essentially, you have all the health data that is being synced to the cloud platform that also provides services like remote health monitoring and emergency response in case you need that. So you can think of it as something that enables, people living alone or even in faraway places away from major health centers to have constant support and constant access to quality healthcare. And overall, this is what the future could possibly look like. And this is what our research hub is actually trying to do, right? And so building next generation sensing and interaction technologies, creating a platform for integrating a diverse, heterogeneous data source. So that's where my work actually fits in, right? Trying to create digitally assisted physical and mental behavior enhancements, building unsupervised learning platforms. So artificial intelligence, software development, model-driven engineering. Again, that's basically software engineering. And then we're looking at the translational area or the the main applications, right? So the end goal here is to have these systems deployed in places like residential aged care settings, in homes that provide proactive interventions and so on. And all that is possible if you look at how different, how all these different technologies, machine learning, natural language processing, IoT, all they come together to help improve the quality of life for elderly and even people who actually need it. So I guess many think technology like this would replace traditional healthcare, but that's not entirely the case. This is here to augment what we have right now and doesn't really aim at replacing anything, not for the time being. And the development resulting from these areas would enable people to improve their quality of life. And so as I gave the example earlier, right? So for instance, think about people living alone or remote areas away from major health centers. And so you have all these cost-effective smaller devices and smart environments that you can build, which essentially helps monitor their health and can even predict something that might happen later to provide a better health outcome for them. So the next question, I guess, many would want to ask or would like to ask is, how do they get involved with this domain? And as I said, the domain largely focuses on improving healthcare and the quality of life for end users. But there's a lot that goes behind it, right? It's not just about, the medical field or computer science or anything. There's a lot that goes behind all this. Now, when we talk about devices and sensors, we're mainly looking at the electronics and the communication sector for for designing and developing such devices, right? So you need to have people who create these sensors and miniature wearables and all that. Similarly, you have these new smart fabrics that have also been introduced, right? Which have embedded sensors and batteries. That's another domain that's involved here, right? With textile. Right, you need to have software to connect and drive all of these components. So essentially, you have software to collect the raw data from these sensors. You need to process them into something that is more useful. Then you might need to send them across to some other application where it can make sense of all this data, analyze it, and so on, right? So you have analytics, you have artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of that coming together just for one common goal. And because health data is really sensitive, really it should be private, obviously, privacy and security is, well, really important. And then you're dealing with health, right? So obviously the healthcare sector also comes into picture. So if you're really interested in this area, there's a lot that you can really do. You can really contribute to, from engineering to medicine to analytics to many others. So why is mHealth important? I guess that's one more thing, one more question that people might tend to ask. So over the years, we've really seen, significant developments in this area that was followed by the adoption of several wireless technologies, mobile technologies. And although we have applications like traditional applications like electronic health records, electronic medical records that are being used, widely even in hospitals, the focus now is on the next big thing, which also includes a transformation of, the traditional model of healthcare into something that, let's say, would be a bit more patient-centric, I'd say. So we're essentially looking at something which can really improve the access to quality healthcare in a very cost-effective manner that may also produce better health outcomes for patients and other end users. So we have technology that monitors your vitals 24/7 and helps detect anomalies, right? And I give an example of the Apple Watch, which literally saved someone's life, right? So similarly, we have devices that have also been used to alert emergency services. When, for instance, someone, let's say falls down a ladder or faints or blacks out, right? So and again, during these times, we've been using COVID tracing apps, right, since the pandemic began. And they are examples of health apps that are in a way assisting healthcare over a larger population, right? And if you think of it, in the future, we might also have these applications that allow us or enable us to perform analytics over a wider population, right? So for instance, in a particular city, you have, X number of people or a large number of people falling sick because of XYZ conditions, environmental reasons, any reasons, pollutants, whatever, during a certain time. So maybe that can help or assist with, planning in advance or improving access to healthcare, preventing that issue from manifesting altogether. And when we talk about the mHealth domain, it's not really confined to this one small area, right? It's basically a framework that involves a collection of different domains and technologies that have come together essentially to enable healthcare anywhere, anytime, using mobile tech, right? Mobile technology. And just think about, right? If we have services like this that are available today, and you can imagine what we might have, a decade or two from now. And yep, I think that with that, I think I can end. And over to you guys. Over to you, Father.
Now you can, Mr. Ben has detailed, I mean, which is not in our mind usually for the ordinary people, even people who are involved in these kinds of integrated health and technology world. These things are novel things. Anyway, youngsters, now you can bring your questions. So you have prepared some questions, so you can one after another you can raise your questions and Ben will be answering.
I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge and capabilities right now. So as I said, my area was mostly software. So, well, over to you guys.
Yeah.
So basically, for our youngsters, what are the
Mhm.
skills or extra skills which are to be acquired and developed to get into these prestigious universities outside of India?
Okay, now to get into university is actually, well, it depends on what you really want to do. So if you're going for something like your bachelor's or master's, I think having a good solid background would be really helpful. So, instance, if you're going for your bachelor's, you need to have good grades and a good background in your schools, right? And then if you're going for a master's, then again, it depends on what your background was, what your experience was. So in my case, when I came here at Deakin, there were a lot of these people who came with different levels of experiences. Some came directly after their bachelor's, some came with 5 or 6 or 7 years of experience in the industry. Then again, it really depends on what your background was like. So for youngsters who really want to go overseas and to study, I mean, I would suggest, doing a bit more research about what universities you're interested in, what field you're really interested in. Don't just go by, the idea of, others are going outside, so I want to go overseas as well. Think about what you really want to in the future. and well, start applying, I guess. And getting into these universities is actually not, it can be a bit challenging, but once you have the proper university and depending on your experience and what grades you had earlier, things can be smooth. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. Sure. So the next, yeah.
Okay, so like this is a debatable question.
Mhm.
Like is mobile a boon or a curse? Like it's a thing that we try to answer, but I know it's very debatable. So what do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Well, it's actually a philosophical question more than something related to the health domain. But I'd say what everyone always has told me before: too much of anything is bad, right? So you have a lot of these technologies, a lot of these things, devices, and facilities, right? So if you use it the way they're meant to be used, well, it's definitely a boon. But if you try to misuse it for some reason, it's definitely not good.
Okay, thank you. And what are the job opportunities within the area like of mobile, I guess?
Ah, well, if you're talking about hardware for mobiles, I mean, you can definitely look at what's really happening in the marketplace. Right, you have different companies coming up with new handsets and new phones like pretty much every other week, right? If you're talking about software, well, then again, if you go to the, let's say, the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, you might find a lot of these new applications that are being developed. So I'd say there's a huge scope, right? And particularly now that everyone is tech savvy and using a lot of these devices, I don't think this domain will go back. There's only, stuff, one way to go, that's forward. For job opportunities, well, development is always open.
Okay, so my question is, can you please explain that mini application part you suggested earlier?
Okay, so basically, well, you all are aware of applications, right? Mobile applications that you're using daily, WhatsApp and Facebook and all these things. Now, I mean, they all work, they all fine. There's no problem with that. But if you look at something like well, for what I'm building for health applications, you have a lot of these things, and users might need to use more than one application, right? So there's nothing wrong with it. But the thing is, can we do something better? Can we try to simplify it? So if you're looking at it from the perspective of an end user, right? So let's say you need to install 3 or 4 applications just to get in touch with people, right? That will be really inconvenient. It might provide different experience. It might not be easy or even useful at all. For developers, think about it. It might not be the same person, but different people might be writing similar code for similar features, right? So it's also waste of time and resources for different people. So with the mini applications, essentially what we're trying to do is, creating miniature forms of apps. So instead of having a complete package, we have one container, right? One application that you install on your phone, and you have these mini versions that run inside that application. So so I'll give you a real world example. I mean, you might have heard of this app called WeChat, and that's really popular in China, and they use it more commonly for e-commerce and mostly whatever they do in that country. So WeChat also uses an ecosystem of mini applications, right? So essentially what they have is one application. It's more like a browser in which they are running a lot of these different mini apps, which are essentially web applications, right? Just like a simple web page, which do a lot of different things, just like a native application would do. And what we're trying to do over here is trying to create mini applications for health.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to know if there are any Indian institutes for courses in cybersecurity and e-health area.
Ooh, for cybersecurity, I think there are IITs and all these institutions. They do offer something for cybersecurity, but I'm not entirely sure of that. Um, Particularly now in 2021. For mobile health, again, I mean, it is relatively a new domain, and we don't really have anything that is, specifically to aiming at not cybersecurity, mobile health. But we do have, these different institutions that cater to a lot of these components, a lot of these units that make or that help build our mHealth domain, right? So as I said, cybersecurity, you have software engineering, you have the medical field itself, and a lot of other fields that come together to build mHealth. Again, it's not a single subject that you are studying, right? It's a combination of different things.
Okay. So what are the basic info needed by a person who'd like to pursue software studies but hasn't studied any IT
Mhm.
related subject in his 12th?
I used to think that for someone to, jump into the software field, you need to have a good background in, computer science, and you must have taken that in 12th and all that. But I found that it's not necessarily true. Um, One thing I realized over here is that, a lot of these people at Deakin, I am teaching a couple of undergraduate units as well, and I've seen a lot of these students who have absolutely no programming background who are coming over here and learning programming and stuff. So again, you have plenty of these resources online, which you can refer to, which you can go through. If you're interested in programming, there are so many resources that you can use to build up your skill set, and then enter this domain, and yeah, take it from there. So again, you have platforms like LinkedIn Learning, you have Coursera, and you have all these resources which offer courses for free that you can attend and you know learn new languages and put them under your tool belt.
Hi, sir. So, my question is that in what way the e-health innovations and integrations will reach to the common people?
What way they embrace the common people? Okay, now that's a good one. So again, let's say 10 years ago, right, when we had the first smartphones and all that, nobody had any idea what mHealth would be like, right? Nobody had any idea what if we'll even be able to use something remotely related to health on your smartphones. But look at what's happening right now, right? We had the first iPhone in 2007, and well, 14 years from now, we have a lot of these smartwatches, smart scales, and all these different devices that people are using in the daily life. So that's a small step that we've taken, right? And they're all what consumer grade devices that are being used by people all around the world. And if you look at what's really available out there, you have heart rate monitors, you have these different uh, you know blood pressure cuffs, and you have pulse oximeters and different things that people are using daily. And that's what I think would happen later on as well, right? So you'll have all these different consumer grade devices that are being released, and slowly and gradually we'll have a complete smart health ecosystem where you might have a smart home where you'll have sensors pretty much everywhere, right? From the tap, from the living room to the bedroom and everywhere. So it's a gradual step. And as I said, right in the beginning, we had literally had nothing, and now we have wearable devices like smart watches. Maybe 10 years from now, we might have a shirt that might be monitoring your heart rate.
So you're working with such great enthusiasm in your area, and like, what is the vision behind this great leap and hard work? Like, is there? It's definitely your interest, but like, is there a higher purpose? Like,
Higher purpose. Can you explain that bit, please? What do you mean by that?
I'm in 12th, right? So like
Okay.
I haven't stepped into reality, right? And like, I have a vision that I have to, get out to the world and do that, and so
All
like,
right.
have you been able to achieve that? I
You
guess.
know, the thing is, like, when you are in 12th, right? So again, the most common thing that we think of is like, we'll try to change the world, we'll try to save everyone and everything. That might not really be possible, right? So the reality is you have to take it one step at a time, right? One small step at a time, and that's when you start making changes. And I remember when we had our orientation, one of our lecturers, one of our professors over here, he basically came in and he was just talking to us and told us, right, so what do you think your research would do for the world? And we all thought, well, we might be making, impacting the lives of like a million people. And then he was like, yeah, whatever you're doing, that's pretty much nothing. It's not even impacting anyone, right? But the thing is, it's all slowly pushing the boundary, right? It's slowly making small changes, and that's what we're trying to do there. And especially when you're in 12th and you want to move ahead, I'd say, try to find an area that you are really interested in. For me, that was computer science, right? Try to work on it, try to find out something that you really, really want to do, and then slowly build up from that. I mean, thinking big is actually a good thing, right? It actually gives you some hope and keeps you focused towards an end goal. But again, I mean, if you're trying to climb Everest and if you look at the peak from the bottom, that might be way too far right now. But then again, one day at a time, right? One step at a time.
So, sir, I wanted to ask, 10 years back, mobile phones did not really impact us as much as it impacts us right now. So,
So sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear that.
it's within a decade, the impact that mobile phones have on us has been so much greater, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you think we can, as we're evolutionizing, I mean, 10 years from now, we will be much more dependent on mobile phones. So, how, as youngsters, how can we impact? How can we transform our lives with the help of these mobile phones?
So okay, so if I understand correctly, you're basically asking about how you can transform your life using mobile phones. As I said, mentioned earlier, right? Too much of anything is not really good, right? And that's a huge potential for misuse in anything. As long as you have, trying to do something productive, something useful, I guess I think you'll be on the right track.
So you did your graduation from here, and
Yep.
you further studies from abroad, right? So
Yep.
your master's, and you're currently doing your PhD outside.
Mhm.
So what is the thing? I mean, what is the difference that you see in terms of research and the education, academics? How do you think? I mean, is it totally different? Is it very different?
Yes. So coming from a background in India, I mean, I'd say it was more like a culture shock. Well, in the academics, obviously, but in here, the general focus here, as in India, the general focus is on well, you all know what that's like, right? Marks, 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 and people just focus on that. But the thing is, over here, people do tend to focus more on what they're learning, and they spend a lot of time trying to research new things, right? So again, I remember back when I was doing my during my BTech days, right? We had classes, we had lectures, a lot of us had notes, and that's all they used to study. That's all we used to study. Assignments did not really matter back then. Just try to put things together and we just submitted them. I mean, that was a poor example that I'm giving you, but this is the reality what we had, right? So people generally tended to just memorize things, spit it out in the exam, and that's it. And 2 weeks later, you would not even remember what you wrote in the exams. That's definitely not a way to learn, right? And here, what I observed was there was a much greater focus on learning things yourself, doing things practically, and putting a lot more effort. Um, about the quality, obviously, there's a big difference between. But depends on what institution you're studying in, right? So if you're studying in, let's say, the IITs, obviously the level of education you get there is absolutely high. It's a good standard. You can expect something similar over here as well, right? And all depends not just on the facilities that you have, not just in the university, but also on the amount of effort that you guys are putting in, right? So are you going back home and trying to explore new things, right? So let's say you're studying computer science. So I just talk about computer science most of the times. So let's say you're studying computer science in 11th or 12th, right? You learned a new concept. Now the question is, are you going back and learning more about it? Are you going and trying to expand on what you guys have learned? If you're doing that, that's what pretty much you can expect over here as well.
So, technologically monitored ways to know behavior and thoughts of individual are growing. So this is fast growing with connecting machine with human brain. So the neuroscience study of the properties of neurons and neural circuits are progressing eagerly. So how it is associated with e-health and how it is actually performing.
Oh, I don't think I'm an expert in in neuroscience. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm qualified to answer this question. So I think if there is someone better qualified, they might be able to answer that better. But as I said, my domain was entirely in software and not into neuroscience. But I mean, if you really want more information, there are these plenty of sources that are available online, right? And off late, you might have heard of this the company, I think Neuralink or something. And there have also been these talks of I don't know, Tesla or Elon Musk trying to implant people's brain with chips. Don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure, but yeah. Again, I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm sorry I can't answer that question.
Excuse me, you have been teaching now. You have as part of your research, you were teaching the students there. So how is your teaching that experience, and also the responses from the children? How do they, even though you have told about Indian universities and study
Right.
styles,
Okay.
but still, what is your experience there?
Right. So when I say teaching, it's not entirely lecturing, right? So generally what we have here is we have one lecture that is delivered by a professor, a lecturer, someone, and then we have tutorials and other activities for the students that we are generally teaching, right? So it's more about more like practical sessions. And in all of them, what we've basically seen is that, a lot of these students, they are, really prepared before they even walk into the class, right? Majority of them. And particularly for the units that I'm teaching, that's introduction to programming here. So what I have observed is, you don't really have to keep on pushing people, to do something. They generally are curious, and that's one of the reasons that taking these units. And unlike what we have back at home, where unfortunately a lot of students are actually forced into taking subjects or forced into selecting a career path, people over here, they choose things themselves, right? So if someone is genuinely interested in computer science, they come over here and they kind of, make a good progress. And one thing that I have observed over here is a lot of these people tend to ask, questions, and it might be something that's, that might sound stupid, but when you think about it, these are all good questions. And even you tend to, just sit there scratching your head, thinking about it. And you'll be like, that's actually something I have never really thought about. And then you go back and it kind of forces you to learn new things and understand new things as well. So for the students, it's mostly what we observed is the curiosity that a lot of these students have is actually much higher.
I mean, to our youngsters and students, can we work to improve those things, so-called curiosity, any practical ways to improve those things?
I mean, one thing I always, tell my students is always think about these two questions, right? How and why. Right? If something works, how does it work, right? And why does it work the way it works, right? If you constantly keep on asking questions like that, I mean, trust me, you'll find a lot of these new things, and you might even get hooked to a certain thing. Right? For instance, I used to do. I gave you an example where I literally burned down my house. So I was the curious kind, and I had this. This remote controlled car that I had back then, and I was really interested in trying to find out how that thing worked and why it ran the way it did. I took a screwdriver, opened it apart, took up the motor, and I was like, okay, so this is what drives the car, right? Plugged it to a battery, it was running fast, and then I had a bright idea. It's a disclaimer: never do this at home. Do not even attempt this. You might end up, destroying stuff. So what I had in mind was, well, what if I connected this to a 220, 240-volt AC, means power supply? Will the motor run faster? So I did that, plugged it in, and bang, that's all I remember, right? So basically shorted out our entire house, destroyed the, the power connection, destroyed the circuit breaker. Well, I learned something, right? You should never do that. But then again, I mean, you do learn things with experimenting and, asking more of these questions. For me, for computer science, again, the question that I used to ask was, how do these things work? How does software really work? And why do these things work the way they do? And that actually led me down the path where I started developing software. So two questions, how and why. They can take you a long way.
Okay, so
Kelvin. Okay.
oh, I'll ask my question then.
Yeah. Sure.
What's the gender disparity in these STEM industry? I mean, this science and technology.
Well, back in India when we used to work, especially in the software development part, I mean, I haven't really observed any disparity as such, because we had almost an equal amount of women as men over there. The same thing over here, right? So I don't think there is much difference, but then again, it depends on where you're coming from. So speaking of disparity, I'm not sure there's a huge gap.
Like most of us Indians, we do have a dream to go out of India and search for better opportunities, but like that does come with a great cost, like not
Yep.
economically, but definitely in your social skills and the way you present yourself. And not only grades would matter, like our experience would also matter. So like, how can we build up on that?
Um, so, well, let's try to break that down into two parts, right? So the experience that you have outside, and then what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
Like the social skills and the way we
Yeah.
present ourselves.
Okay. So again, every country would have their own, their own culture, their own norms, and when you're coming from a different country, so let's say you're moving from India to Australia, you might most certainly go through what we call a culture shock. Right, so you have certain ideas, and when you come over here, right? Now, for people from Delhi and other metropolitan cities, it might not really be as as much as severe. But let's say someone from well, a remote area, right? Let's say someone coming from a village in Kerala or somewhere. For them, coming over to this place, having a language barrier, having you know a different experience altogether, that might cause some trouble initially. But then again, as time passes, you pick up new things, and we all learn how to adapt. And when it comes to conducting yourself, I mean, I would always say, learn the lay of the land, right? When in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Learn about the people, learn about how, learn about the culture, and try to integrate yourself as much as possible. And in no time, things will be fine. Now, each country would have, different norms, and well, the best thing you could do is actually try to learn how the people live over here and what they might find offensive and what they find acceptable, and live according to that.
So my question is that do you think that e-health sector has brought a depression in a number of healthcare specialists?
Depression in healthcare specialists, I'm not sure if people are actually depressed. And then again, as I mentioned, the idea with mHealth and eHealth is not really to replace, the traditional practices we have right now. Traditional, as in, the common hospitals and all these things that we have now. We're not really trying to replace that, but trying to augment all that. And then again, right, it's still the beginning, and there's still a long way to go. Depression, well, that's an entirely different topic, and well, I'm not sure if we can cover that here. But I don't think mHealth, right, having some technology that is assisting people have, caused the depression. I'm not sure that that's true.
So anyone else has any more questions? No. Okay. Anyway, I am usually looking into the skills, interests, and practices of youngsters. So as Ben was telling, you had a complicated relationship with technology in your schooling age. Even you tried with AC and car to connect. No, that is no, that paved you to this level, no doubt, because these are all certain innate, so-called natural instincts. Okay, if you okay, that might have not got any so-called disciplined academic patch up, but you have naturally tried for that, and at times, okay, truly self-killed, but all those things you paved way to make you here, and also no doubt we believe in God and God's plan, and you tried for Germany, but God led you to this place, and
Yeah.
no doubt you are grateful, and we listen to, because you yourself told this is a new domain, and which is the latest flourishing domain, and God led you to this platform. So basically it is not marks, it is not so-called memory, but this adventure, so-called, to follow
Yeah.
oneself. And also that networking, I mean, these are all wonderful things. And even the failure, I mean, how you approach your life, failure helped you to enjoy and to turn to doing, love doing what you really wish to.
Yeah.
So it was not academics then, it is just loving doing things. I
Yeah.
mean, these are all truly and many academic practicals you have told, using or practicing what you have learned. mean, to at one level, even from schooling age, our youngsters should build these skills by not just reading, memorizing, and just looking only for marks and exams. And anyway, and also the choice between Saint Stephen, Friends, Delhi, and our so-called Mallu Kerala. And between that, you decided. And truly, these, though it seems to be very simple, but they were the great leaps that you have taken in your life to be here. And no doubt, this Deakin University, where one of our youngsters are researching and becoming, surely, as you, if you return here, or even if you work there for future, you will be a great person to contribute into this health applications and all. And we are just truly waiting to listen great news from you. Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Ben, and also the youngsters. We have now our Jasmine to give a not formal but still a vote of thanks.
As we come to an end of this amazing informative session, I would love to thank Mr. Ben Philip for bringing up such a beautiful session and sharing us information on his research that most of us weren't even aware of. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and answering all our queries patiently. We wish you good luck for your current research and may you be able to contribute to the society more. This session indeed helped all of us. Also, I would take this opportunity to thank Father Benny for organizing such a platform to help us learn and grow. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants who made this session more interesting and lively. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ben, thanks a lot. You're from a different continent, and this is just going to be midnight there. Still,
Yeah.
and in your, you have, as you are doing your PhD, you have different assignments. I mean, every now and then, and also you are teaching, so various jobs. But still, this is just sharing our experiences, because the elders, the experienced experts, sharing their experiences to motivate and to guide the youngsters are wonderful. And that is this platform, and many are watching, because every episode may not be lively watching, but people are watching, and especially this field is wonderfully great. And meanwhile, I was just sharing the poster, one of your friends, I told you, seeing your poster, oh, this is my Ben. He was my friend for my degree, BTech. I mean, that way, so more people will be hearing your words and experiences. So thanks a lot. So we end, and we pray for the success, especially of Ben Philip, also the youngsters. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.